Hi everyone, my name is Sumaya Ahmed and I am the Virtual Content Specialist for 7th grade science. This video will guide you through reading the article Tropical Andes Threats to help you gather information on how human activities are having a negative impact on the Andes, and hopefully that will help you gather information for your research projects. So this resource starts with this picture here. It shows large trucks with parts of cut down trees, and the caption is Deforestation in Bolivia. So, this should give you an introduction on the threats to the Andes that can be caused by deforestation. Maybe some questions that we can ask are how often do they bring down these trucks to cut down these trees? How many trees do they cut down every time they do this process, and how that will have an effect on the surrounding wildlife. So that is the first picture that they start off with, and then we are going to start off with the introduction. Human communities, including the great empire of the Incas, have lived in the tropical Andes for thousands of years. Because the inter-Andean valleys are the most hospitable to people, they are also the most degraded parts of the hotspot, with less than 10% of their original habitat remaining. At the other end of the spectrum, some of the least degraded parts of the hotspot include isolated regions in Venezuela and Colombia, and the eastern slope of the Andes in Bolivia, Peru, and parts of Ecuador. In Peru and Bolivia, particularly, time still exists to establish reserves in areas of intact primary forests. However, the effects of a large and growing population continue to threaten biodiversity through the tropical Andes. Several cities with millions of inhabitants, including Santa Fe de Bogota, Colombia, and Quito, Ecuador, are located within the hotspot and continue to expand as their populations grow. So that is the first part of their introduction, and they are talking about the hotspots of that area, and then they will continue to talk about the threats to the hotspot. So the first section is called Population Pressure and Migration. Population pressure and migration are deforestation drivers caused by the increasing need for new and greater areas for agricultural production and an increasing demand for food, water, and energy by large populations in distant urban centers, as well as in Amazonian communities. Large migrations to towns and cities are a result of shifting economic trends, employment and education opportunities, and housing and urban development, all leading to higher standards of living. Human concentrations in urban areas and associated infrastructure, while occupying smaller percentages of land area than dispersed rural populations, have much wider impacts on the environment as they require increasing amounts of water, energy, and natural resources from surrounding landscapes. So let's look back at what we just read. The first term here is again deforestation, which is similar to the picture that we saw in the beginning. So this is what the process of deforestation looks like. They cut down trees and they use it for their purposes. They're saying that the need for new and greater areas of agricultural production is leading to increased demand for food and water. So as we increase agricultural production, we need more food, water, and energy by the people around the community. As we move on to the second paragraph, it says large migrations to towns and cities are a result of shifting economic trends. So let's think about the term shifting economic trends. So they give some examples of that. Okay, we have employment, education opportunities, housing and urban development. So these are different types of jobs for different skills, And if you think about this, what does this mean to have a higher standard of living, which is what they mention here, all leading to higher standards of living? Think about the community that you live in, right? People want a stable income, they want access to education, they want access to food, clothing, necessities, access to healthcare facilities, hospitals, doctors' offices, clinics, pharmacies, community health programs. Think about if you have those things in the community that you are living in now. So you have schools, you have colleges, healthcare facilities. So all of these are present in an urban community. So this is what they are talking about here. So as humans are starting to concentrate in these areas, there is a higher need for these factors, which lead to higher standards of living. And for that, you need water, energy, and natural resources from the surrounding landscapes, which is what they would get from the Andes area. The next part is transportation infrastructure. At the national level, some hotspot countries have recently made significant investments in road and river infrastructure in the region, particularly Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru, including the paving and widening of existing roads or the creation of new ones. Road improvement in the humid montane forests on the eastern slopes of these countries are expected to experience the most severe impacts on species conservation due to high levels of endemism associated with cloud forests in this region that previously had few points of human entry. If environmental conditions are severely altered by road projects, extinction of some species may occur, especially those with restricted populations. So let's pause here. Now, in order for these rising communities to do well, we need roads, and they need to pave roads or make new ones. Now, one of the impacts can be affecting the species that live around those areas if you start to pave roads or create new roads on in a specific area. So let's look at this part here. The most severe impacts on species conservation due to high levels of endemism. So, what does that mean? The term endemism. It may be new, and I'm going to keep that word in mind. So remember, whenever you are not clear about a word, look at the sentence it's in. We know that there are high levels of endemism in this area, so I will look up the definition for endemism. And if I look it up here, it means the state of a species being native to a single defined geographic location. Okay, so if we go back to our reading, it says there are high levels of endemism associated with cloud forests. So we know in this area there are a higher level of species being native to that specific area. Another thing that I like to do while defining words I'm not clear about is look for the images for that word. So I'm going to look, and I'm going to look for one that's easy to understand, and I like this one. Okay, this little web that shows us terms related to endemism. And as you can see, endemism can occur because of poor adaptability, changing climate conditions, geographical barriers. So all of these causes lead to endemism, okay, or lead to a species being native to that single location. And this makes sense in that sentence because the pavement or creation of new roads can have an impact on high levels of endemism in that area. And then it says in the next sentence, if environmental conditions are severely altered by road projects, it can especially have an effect on those restricted populations. So again, we know that to restrict something means to limit something. So that means something is limited, which again relates to these endemic species because they have limited options for living conditions in that area. Our next section is dams for hydroelectric production and irrigation. Due to rising energy demands and abundant untapped potential, the number of hydropower projects is rapidly increasing in the hotspot. This is especially true in the Andean Amazonian countries, where regional governments are prioritizing new hydroelectric dams to satisfy energy needs. Installation of new hydroelectric projects requires new roads and flooding, both of which lead to deforestation. So we can ask, what do hydroelectric dams do? So let's break down the word first. So we have hydro, which means water, and electric related to electricity. So they use water to create electricity. Now, again, if you are not sure about a word, you are going to go to Google and you're going to Google hydroelectric dams. They give you a definition. So they produce power using the power of water. And also, what I always like to do is to look at images. And if you scroll down here, they have a lot of examples of hydroelectric dams. I like this one because it shows you the process of an hydroelectric dam. So you have a water reservoir here, and then you have a generator here with a turbine, and that generator creates power with the energy of the water flowing through, and that power, electricity, is transferred to these power lines, which provides electricity. Okay, so again, great tip whenever you're trying to define words. Okay, look at the definition and then go to images to give you a visual representation of the word. So now if we go back to our reading, it tells you the installation of these new hydroelectric projects requires new roads and flooding. So if you want to build new roads, you need to go through the process of deforestation, which leads to destruction of the habitat. Again, you could connect back to our endemism and how there are certain species that are very specific to that area because they have no other suitable conditions to live in. So if you destroy those roads where they are living in, then those species may go extinct. Therefore, the production of hydroelectric dams can also have a negative effect on the area. And again, this goes back to our first paragraph where we talked about population pressure. So as we have more people growing in these cities, and they want higher standards of living, you need food, water, and electricity. And that is why they would have to build these hydroelectric dams, which can destroy the habitats of a lot of organisms and destroy the diversity of an area. Mining. Mining for copper, gold, silver, and other minerals affects large areas of the hotspot. This extractive activity occurs both legally and illegally and has a huge impact on habitat loss, degradation, and contamination of soils and water courses. So over here, something to look into is that this extractive activity occurs both legally and illegally. So there are laws that allow mining to occur. However, there are also ways that people conduct these extractive activities illegally. So this could be one possible idea for a solution for your research projects to prevent further harm for this region. Maybe to take legal action and make changes or petition to make changes to laws to protect these areas, or have harsher consequences for people who illegally do these mining practices in these areas, which lead to habitat loss and contaminate the soil and water in those areas. Next, overexploitation of species. In many remote rural areas of the tropical Andes hotspot, families still depend on firewood for cooking fuel, and its collection and use can have strong negative impacts on both the local environment due to overharvest of natural forests, as well as human health due to smoke and carbon monoxide production, especially among women and children. So, again, this goes back. Remember, we saw our picture over here of these workers cutting down trees, and they can overexploit the resources around that area, but they can also have a negative impact on the health because of the gases that they are releasing. So that could also be a problem to which there can be a solution to think about for your research project. What can we do to prevent these negative impacts on human health due to the smoke and carbon monoxide being released when they are using firewood for cooking fuel? The last section is called Hunting and Illegal Trade. The growth of human populations has increased demand for some species and increased market prices for commercial species. Today, hunting for food is usually localized and not widespread in the hotspot, while hunting for illegal trade is much more common. Again, this can be related to the laws in that area, and one possible solution can be, what can we do to maybe convince the government to make changes to the law, and prevent having these illegal practices, such as these illegal hunting practices, to protect the organisms and the diversity of this area. So, this was the article, Tropical Andes Threats. And as you can see, there are several different sections, and hopefully, this will help you for your research project in analyzing the negative impacts of humans on the Andes region. Thank you.